and do something with it later than to not have it at all and regret that we didn't do it. So,
Yep.
David,
yes.
darn it, I was gonna miss the makeup opportunity. I was looking forward to that, but we'll take a rain check today, okay?
Oh yeah, I know. It's really, I have no excuses for this late in the evening. Usually I can, on the breakfast call, I can usually say, sorry guys, it's early in the morning. I don't have my makeup on, but this late in the evening, there's no excuses. I should be up and, and out and, doing productive things by this hour. But I'm a late night. The joke behind that is that I'm a late night person. And I I can stay up till 2 a.m, like it's nothing at all, but I'm not the best in my best state of mind at 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's just the way it is. I don't know how to. People want to, say, well, your early bird gets the worm. I've heard that stuff my whole life, and I'm like, I've woken up at those hours, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything at all. But my brain is wired to do its best thinking, to do its most productive thing the later in the day it gets. It's just the way it is, and I use that to my advantage. I mean, I'm kind of forced to. So when I joke around in the mornings about, Santa will mess around with me and say, wakey wakey eggs and bakey, and that's the little line we give to each other. And it can be 12:30, it could be 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's telling me that. So so
Awesome.
so we rib each other. But yeah, so where were we going with that? That was makeup. We were talking about makeup. So tell me, I don't know, we've met in person, haven't we, Anne Marie?
I think so, but I know that when you did the caravan with that mobile home, we had your supplies. I felt like I met you, but I think we did, yeah, at one of the at the centers, yeah.
Yeah. I've met you, but I don't think you and I have had a lot of time to chit chat, like one on one. And
no, not at all.
It's unfortunate, things like that are hard to do. They're nice to do when we have our open when there's no coronavirus, to put it bluntly, but because it's easy to meet people one on one and chit chat and get to know them. But this past year, it's been a throwaway. So, but maybe we'll get back to it. But what are some of your plans for the New Year's? Do you have any plans or ideas?
I have ideas, and they're kind of, I'm keeping them close right now. So
no worries. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for understanding. Yes, but
yeah.
I feel like I've known you because you've done some of the things, and I've always been on Zoom. So this is the best way of, the one-on-one.
Yeah. I've definitely seen you I've definitely seen your tag on the on the Zoom, and we've definitely encountered each other. I just know it. And like yourself and a lot of people, I haven't had time to really sit down or get to know one-on-one, like, oh, okay, let's see what Annie Marie's up to, and what is she trying to do, or but basically what I do is our mobile homes. I think that's my main bread and butter right now. But I am looking to try to get into cash flow properties, probably like multifamilies, where I can just be a little bit more of a money partner, because I've got enough like management responsibilities in my life in real estate at this point. So I kind of want to diversify into things where somebody else is more of the managing partner, I'm a little bit more the money partner. Doesn't mean I won't have like 2 cents to worth to throw in or whatever. But anyway, if that sounds like anything that aligns with what you're doing, then perhaps we can consider doing something together. Or if you find a deal that's a cash flow deal. I'm probably going to take a back seat on trying to wholesale and flip, and I kind of did that last year. No, but that's my own personal reasons. That does not a reflection on why somebody else should or should not do that. But I just anyway, I'm a little bit more of a cash flow person myself recently, but I've also kind of hit a certain income level too, where if I'm going to start getting taxed pretty heavily. That's the way I feel about it, and I hate to just give that much money away. That's probably a very poor excuse not to do something, but it is kind of my excuse, whether it's legitimate or not. But as we just talk about all the time, I'm also really going to try to ramp up my equity trust account, the retirement account. But I'm not quite there mentally ready to flip inside that account, flip a property inside that account. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. Maybe more than you wanted to know or whatever. So, but
I think, using the tax deferred or tax free version of investing through the self-directed IRAs is a really good thing to do, especially that you want to keep more of your money, and as the spread gets slimmer, we need to make sure that we're not paying too much in taxes. We always want to pay, our fair share of taxes. But if we can use a vehicle that makes us either tax-free or tax deferred, I think that helps us with our profit.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been playing around with the Equity Trust website the past couple of days. I mean, it's the more every time I go to look at them, I'm just amazed at all the things you can do with that equity trust. And like Steve and I were talking last week on the breakfast call, you can take the route of listing all the things you can do in the account or can do in the account, but it's almost better to describe, here's what you cannot do, and then you can do everything else. It's
Correct.
almost a better way to describe it like that. Yeah. So and the things that you can't do would make sense why you can't do them, or they're not interesting, or they're very niche, like I don't even know what it is, because I wasn't interested in doing any of those things anyway. So I don't even know what the list is. So
like Persian rugs or something like that, artwork, Persian rugs.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, stuff like that. It's like, I don't even know what they're talking about. I don't even know what that means. So
how do you even get involved in that?
Yeah, sounds like drug smuggling to me. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, I'm pretty excited about real estate moving forward. I think it's going to continue to be strong overall, but I think that there's going to be niches that are going to be coming up in the real estate market too. You've got now that we know we're going full steam ahead Democrat, which we don't want to get political here, but we can and need to talk about the politics of what's at hand. But it looks like stimulus checks are going to be in full gas pedal mode, which feels nice in the short run. It's going to help a lot of people out. There's debate about whether that hurts everything in the long run. People have different opinions on that, but the fear is that so much money is printed and spent that it causes a price inflation. So now the price of your McDonald's Big Mac, it was $5 and now it's $10, and how that affects everyday people's purchasing power. So yeah, they're getting stimulus checks, but it's at the cost of this price inflation in the economy. But kind of back on real estate, it looks like one of the legislations that was talked about in the campaign trail was a possible $15,000 first-time homeowners tax credit, or just a credit. It's a little unclear whether how that's going to play out, but I think it feels pretty certain that something like that's going to come forward, and probably sooner rather than later, but not like in the first 90 days kind of thing, maybe, but probably between May and the end of the year. And what that essentially means is the if it's a tax credit, it means you get to I might have this wrong, but I'm getting the premise of it mostly right, so that's all that matters for now. But you get $15,000 direct check for buying a house for your first time. And if you are a proponent of this type of program, then the nice thing about this program is that a lot of people have been saying that the housing market's been getting really to the brink of being unable to be afforded by people. And then likewise, I think Susan was pointing out earlier that interest rates would potentially be increasing. So the government's going to potentially have this tool in their belt to offset rising interest rates for first-time home buyers, which it presents an interesting dynamic. But I don't know if they're going to be strategic and try to use this tool at a time when maybe they see the market dipping, but it's probably going to come through pretty soon. And I would even think they have a certain level of bipartisan support, whether they need bipartisan support or not. But I see that as a pretty big possibility of passing, and it's a measure to stimulate the housing market if you start to see rising interest rates, or you start to see forbearance and foreclosures start to rise. I think there's mortgage delinquencies are at 20-year high. Wow. And so there's a backlog. I don't have numbers on this stuff. Sorry about that, because I don't even have a PowerPoint. So if someone who is numerically inclined, they can go look these things up, or maybe I'll help you find.
I think what happened there was when the COVID hit, we had the moratorium on foreclosures. And so nobody was filing new foreclosures and people stopped paying their mortgage. And then, so right now we have a backlog. And then once they start saying, okay, the moratorium is lifted, let's start filing. So now the attorneys are going to be backlogged on processing, and then the courts are going to be backlogged on processing that. I check the list pendants every week, and for the past 2 weeks there were 0 in Berkeley County anyway, new foreclosures filed. And so I was assuming that once January hit, because the moratorium ended December 31st, that immediately people would start filing, but it hasn't caught up yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great stat to follow. But if it's 0, that means that there's not 0.
No.
So we can glean that much from the information, right?
Exactly. It didn't hit the court yet.
So, yeah, it's been a strange time to as a real estate investor, honestly. I mean, it's been a profitable past year for me, for sure, and that's nice to be a part of. But it's also having to rework and rewire your brain for a new political environment, and this notion in 2020 where they had an eviction moratorium for the first time in the history of the United States that I've ever heard of. That really, to me, and they did it so under the radar and just kind of was this small little news article that came out, and it wasn't like really, it wasn't debated. There was no public discourse on whether it would be the right thing to do or not. But anyway, it just it shows, I think, the nature of that the government probably will go to whatever extent they can, and that's a big, gigantic extent that they can use, a big hammer they can use, let's just say, to use tools and tricks and tactics to try to, keep everything in order as they see it from their point of view. And, but, they're not necessarily looking out for our best interests, which is, for better or worse or whatever. But, it's a little scary moving forward to think that just out of nowhere, they can tell you that you don't have the contractual ability to remove a delinquent tenant from your home or a delinquent mortgage from your seller financing deals, or so forth. So, it doesn't mean it won't happen at some point, but we've been forced, and that's something we talk about a lot, is where we've been forced to really evaluate how do we continue these deals moving forward, to where we're not, taking the hit as a landlord. And another stat, let's see, 12 million people are behind in rent that would normally have been evicted. That's 12 million people in this country that owe, and they owe about an average of $5,800 in back rent. So at the point at which those people are evictable, or they choose to move on their own free will or whatever, I mean, do you think they're going to come back and pay the landlord they just squatted in their house for 6 months? I don't think so. I've got one or two scenarios playing out like that where I'm just pretty sure I'm not going to see the money ever again. But I'm happy that the overall seem to be doing well. So, yeah, it's different times for sure. But maybe the stimulus checks will, be the Band-Aid that covers everything up. And but then there's some people that suspect that people are going to go spend stimulus checks on the things that they want, like disposable income, as they call it in economics, where you just, okay, I'm going to go on a vacation now. Okay, I'm going to go do this. They're not necessarily interested in spending their stimulus money on catching up on their mortgage or catching up on their rent with their landlord, because there's no jurisdiction for the landlord to kick them out anyway. There's really no downside. So it's going to be interesting to see how these things play out. And all the answers are definitely not out there. But I think one thing is for sure is that the government is going to print money out of thin air to be able to more or less do whatever they want with that money. And it'll be an interesting experiment to see how effective those programs are going to be. But it might, like I said, be at the cost where, today we pay $5 for a Big Mac at McDonald's, and 2 years we pay, or 2, 3, 4, 5 years we're paying $10 or $12 for that same meal. It's price inflation is kind of the effect that a lot of people predict from that kind of a thing. So then we're kind of back to square one of like, well, now everything, do you raise rent accordingly? And, can landlords keep up with the rent, their rent prices with that inflation? So there's going to be some interesting dynamics playing out that have to really be thought through. And I think anybody who claims they have the exact answer is probably somebody that should probably be ignored. But I think we can take rough shots at and at least have guesswork on what might play out, and then try to plan accordingly. So, but it's definitely a lot of moving parts there. So, all right, I ranted for a little while there. I hope I didn't lose everybody, but
I was just going to add that your statistics are right on, because my tenant owes us $5,080. And so that was October, November, December, and January. And I'm ready to just say, hey, I'm selling the house. You need to move by February. Forgive your 5,000, just be out, or I'd have to give them 30 days notice. And so that, I think that's what I'm thinking that I would like to do. But it's hard to do that, especially when they're not returning phone calls and contacting. So I just might just have that letter and be the 30-day notice, and give them until February 15th, And after that, hopefully we don't have a moratorium and I can just take them into the eviction court.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, I'm right there with you on one of mine, and you know, I'm kind of personally, I'm kind of seeing what on I'm before I take any send any letters out or do any legal processes. I'm actually thinking I'm just going to wait until Biden's inaugurated because he might, with the stroke of one pen, um, you know, change this eviction moratorium or change something that, like I said, the eviction moratorium was put in place without discourse whatsoever.
Yes.
They did it basically martial law, which call that right, wrong, whatever. But you know, it was more or less martial law. So we'll see how much martial law Joe Biden puts forth, you know, without getting political in these statements. But that's essentially, you know, what's happening is that these executive orders and new administrative orders are going to potentially come down like a hammer. So what I'm thinking is before I send my tenant a letter that tells them they're going to be evicted in February, I'm gonna wait till the 20th of January. I'm not saying the way you're doing it is wrong, Susan, because obviously your point of view is just as valid as well. But I, you know, personally waiting to see what happens. It's on January 20th. And then there's some people think that Trump will still be our president by then. You know, I don't know. So, but I think that theory's fading pretty quickly, though. So
it's you know, very difficult times for a lot of people, and you know, I do understand if a tenant is having a hardship, all they need to do is communicate that to us, and that alone, that big communication between saying, hey, I really don't have the money this month, just work with me. You know, we said, well, do you have $50? Give me $50. Something. We know that they're working with us, but to ignore, to not return phone calls, to not initiate any type of contact, that's a big difference between a good tenant and a tenant who doesn't respect where they live.
yeah, and I agree, and that right there is unfortunately the one thing. If you say what makes you lose sleep at night, and I haven't been able to overcome this because I've always got some tenants in the background playing some kind of games, but the times, and it's happened unfortunately all much in the past year, but times where the tenants turn their phone or the worst is this too. How about I put the check in the mail?
Oh yeah.
and then you go to check the mail and they say, oh, I don't know what happened. I sent it.
Mm-hmm.
And then a week later, their phone's turned off. And then they tell you, and then you find out that they never really sent the check.
Sure.
And then you find out that, you know, then you go drive by the house and you find out that actually someone completely different is living there now.
Oh, no.
And then you find out that, you know, there's drugs. Aliska, and at some point we all just had to laugh because it just becomes like a reality TV show. But this has been part of my story for 2020.
David,
So,
that's Bravo Channel right there. Oh my goodness.
I'm telling you.
Wow.
You know, and granted, I'm in the mobile home world, you know, for the most part, but you know, I have mostly good things to say about mobile home investing, but the bad times, the bad things, I got to say, at least in the end, you get to tell a lot of really good stories. So there's that, you know, and maybe one day I'll write a book or have my own reality TV show. But I don't even watch those. I don't even watch those reality TV shows. One, because I just don't have time to do it necessarily. But two, I'm like,
you don't need to.
Reality's better than fiction, really. I mean, if you But I mean, it does help to try to some degree have a sense of humor when you get effed over, screwed over, because it does, you can't, it's not funny in the moment, but at some point you have to look back and just be like, damn, they screwed me. Let me tell you what they did. This is funny. You'll listen to this, you know? So, and that's kind of how you have to handle it, or else it'll just, everything will just eat you alive eventually. I mean, but you know, and the bigger important thing of it all is that you have a strong, broad portfolio that's diversified and different types of things. But you're gonna, you know, it's like I said, I've got somebody right now that turned their phone off. Check's in the mail. No, the check's not in the mail, or at least I didn't get it, you know. And then now your phone's off. Oh, okay, so your phone's off now. And it's even funny when down the road, what they do is they'll come back and say, well, I mean, my phone got turned off. Sorry, I didn't have your number. And I'm like, yeah. Like, you mean like 6 weeks went by and you couldn't figure out how to contact me somehow or another? And it's like, no, you're done. You're done. That's game over. But you know, most of the time they understand when it's game over, and they have, I don't know, I'd say 75% of the time for me, they end up moving out on their own anyway. Doesn't mean they pay me back rent, but at least they move out on their own because they kind of realize, like, hey, you know, Mr. Hodges was at least nice to us. He didn't ever really, like, you know, do anything shady to us. So I guess we got 3 or 4 months of free rent. So we're done. You know, maybe we should draw the line somewhere, and they kind of move out. So, you know, that's how 2020 was kind of for about 6 or 8 of mine. But
I would think that they would rather move out before they get the eviction on their record, because then it's going to be harder for them to rent in the next place if people take a background check or look to see if they've had any prior evictions.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I try to give people fair warning too. I mean, hey, I tell you what, I want to work something out with you. I'd rather you just pay your rent. I know you don't have the rent. Times are tough, but I'd really rather not have to do this because it's going to hurt your record. And so, yeah, but you always, you know, I always go for those conversations, but those conversations sometimes just aren't available because they just turn their phone off and they wall off. Once one of these tenants just puts a wall up and they, you know, then sometimes it's not recoverable. Sometimes 6 weeks later they pop out and they call you back crying and they're like, I'm so sorry. And it's like, really? Are you kidding me? Like, you get that. It's like some kind of like a ex-girlfriend showed back up, like, I shouldn't have done that to you. I'm so sorry. And I'm just like, I mean, we're already broken up. Like,
I just thought about that, David.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't get back together with you. You cheated on me, you know? You stole
Funny
from
stories.
me. Yeah. So, you know, like I said, you got to have a sense of humor, and you got to, like, you know, otherwise you know, there are things that might prevent you from staying in the business. But everybody handles things a little differently. Everybody has a different risk tolerance. Everybody has a different, you know, kind of emotional strength behind what it is they want to do. Some people are hunters, some people are farmers. I'm a little bit more of a farmer. A farmer just being cash flow, a hunter being a wholesale type or a flip type. Will Silva is everybody's a mix of both. Most people are. Very few people are just 100% hunter and 100% farmer, but those people are out there too. But you know, I'm probably more like 70% farmer and 30% hunter. That's kind of my sweet spot. But you know, anyway, that's it's when the farming doesn't work out, sometimes it does feel nice to go get a wholesale deal where you're like, okay, I made $10,000 or I made $5,000, and it would have taken me an entire year to make that on that one rental property. So, it's it's kind of nice to have that, to take your mind off that loss from the cash flow side. If that happens, it's kind of nice to say, well, okay, that one tenant screwed me over and I cost me $10,000 in renovations, but I just did a flip and I made all this money. So it's a lot of things to keep you in the game and keep you going. So
No, that is true. I mean, the difference between us buying something and then owner financing it and still being on the receiving end of, almost like someone with their rental mentality, even though they're buying it from us with owner financing, they still have that rental mentality. And when you flip it, you just make that cash, you're done, and there's no long-term relationship there. And so there's, I think a nice, mix of those two, especially when we have, times like this would definitely work out a little bit better than just all rentals or all flipping.
yeah, it's definitely nice. I guess it's just us four on the call still. I just was checking back in, which is fine. I mean, I'm enjoying this conversation. Let's see here. Let's see. We've talked about, I've got notes, but so I mean, I think it's very possible subject twos are going to be a thing coming up.
Yeah.
And maybe the stimulus checks will offset that to some degree, but I mean, I see subject twos coming back into vogue, and that hasn't really been that way for a long time, at least from my point of view, and I'm limited personally. But Susan, you're more you're an expert compared to me for sure. So
well, we did
you're an expert.
two subject to deals this year. We did a few last year. And basically, I mean, I talked to a few different wholesalers, and their goal is to get it under contract subject to, and which is a great thing because it sweetens the pot with the terms. And believe it or not, there are a lot of people out there just saying, one lady said to this one wholesaler in Columbia, I just don't want to pay any closing costs. You take the house subject to the mortgage, and I don't want to pay any closing costs. Of course, he educated her what subject to was. And he got the property subject to. He's now turning that into a rental. He was going to wholesale it, but with those terms, he's just going to now have a buy and hold.
Yeah.
And, then there was another. So within the last few weeks, I know of at least 6 subject to deals that were just recently signed. So it is popping up. And people are definitely willing to do that because they don't want anything for it, or they can get a little bit upfront for moving money, and it's really a good strategy. So people are using it and getting them under contract that way.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, how about you, Vincent? Are you finding any luck in the subject to arena?
Well, we just wholesaled a sub 2 to Brad and John. There was a house over here on John's Island, and that was the first one I did. I actually brought John in to do the pitch and watched him do it, and no, it was impressive. I'll be honest, he really didn't even give him an option. He just said, "Here's how it can go down. This is the only way we can do this deal." And they were more than receptive to it because they were in a pickle. Like the house needed a bunch of work. Obviously, the balance left on the note wouldn't make a regular deal work. So sub 2 was the only way for it to happen. I think we got a little bit of help because she had something to compare it to. She had another offer to compare it to. And that offer was simply a suggestion to let it go to foreclosure. There was a flipper out here that was interested, didn't know what the heck they were doing, and simply told the homeowner to let it go to foreclosure. There's nothing anybody could do for you. So I was like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I felt like calling them up and telling them what I thought. But anyways,
It
nonetheless,
wasn't somebody from Tri-County, I can tell
no,
you
it
that.
definitely was not. They would have had a conversation if that was the case. But no, that
Yeah.
no, but they were super great. Here's the thing, that my short experience with sub twos, they were incredibly grateful
Yes,
because everyone else tells them there's nothing they can do. And we came
Yeah.
in saving grace. They're super. I got a really, really nice text message from them. And it's good, make a couple bucks and everyone's happy. So that's as far as recent experience, that's my only one.
Yeah, wow,
But
that's a great illustration for a lot of things, but it's one that comes to mind is that, when the deal's a deal and it's a win-win-win for everybody, wholesaler, uh, Brad and John being the buyer, let's call them, and then the seller. I mean, it's apparent and evident, and everything clicks, and that's what deals are supposed to be. They're not. Sometimes deals get rough and nasty, but usually that's um, a lot of times because the proper things have not been communicated to the seller. But it sounds like Brad and John had the right mix of expertise and professionalism and
certainly,
confidence going in, because
certainly.
people kind of sniff out the confidence a little bit too.
Well,
That,
and I just wanted to touch on this, and Susan, maybe you can touch on it too, like because
Sure.
from what you're saying and what you both of y'all are experiencing, right, is an uptick in renters not paying, an uptick in homeowners not being able to pay. So sub two moving forward probably is a good strategy to use because it might be the only way to help these homeowners. I preface with that as because we went in there, Chelsea and I, simply to help these folks and kind of built that layer of trust, right? That foundation, that crust of the pie, you could say. And then I brought in Brad and John because they could estimate the repairs better than I, and of course, John know how to close it and explain it. So, anyways, there was certainly a team effort there, and
I mean, hey,
it's different. It felt different though with the sub two, um, in the term of they really got to trust you,
yes,
like because he told him like, look, we're gonna be taking over, the payments, and I'll give you your profit up front and all that, and they were comfortable with that, of course, because they were comfortable with all of us, but and secondly, they're obviously very motivated, but they're not just going to let some stranger take over their payments, you know? So I don't know. I've only done one. It sounds like more are coming, and it was certainly a good experience. So
it's where you can turn a no deal into a deal. And basically, just like that seller, it was either foreclosure and all of the, the credit that they have to then start rebuilding 7 years, and also the stigma behind that. So their motivation was really high and they knew they had no other choice. And this was an option. And you and Chelsea, I tell you, are really good at relationship building. You're just genuine, and people, naturally trust you, and they rightfully so. And so that
thank you.
alone, building that first layer of credibility and that relationship building definitely added to them easily saying yes. Okay, they're bringing John and Brad in as the experts, for the repairs and for, as the buyers, but just because they trust you, they trust Brad and John now. So it's you built that relationship first.
Yes, ma'am. And I appreciate you saying that because at the end of the day, what else are these folks going to do? So you got to go in there and do your best. So I don't know. It was cool. I'm looking forward to not looking forward to doing more in the sense of there's more pain to, that's coming. But, if we can be a part of that solution, then let's roll.
well, and that's the thing that you're able to do is you're recognizing what's your talent and what's your interest and what is not your talent, what is not your interest. Um, kicking, kicking that to the person where it is in place,
Exactly.
that's huge. And it takes, I mean, I know sometimes I struggle with, hey, I think I can do all this. Oh, toilet needs fixing. Why would I hire someone to do that? I can go and do that. And it's like, well, then you go and then 6 hours later, you're like, oh, that's why I should have hired someone to do it, because, it's 6 hours later and the damn problem's still not fixed. So, but anyway, I was thinking that maybe just change the subject a little bit, that have you, Vincent, considered starting like a property management company?
Um, not well. I have not, and why do you ask?
Well, here's the thing, because I know at one point you've mentioned that you want to get into some more cash flow stuff. And so because you have the, you have the skill set and, the personality to do wholesaling and show people that you're trustworthy and, deliver your product and things like that. And, property management would be a way for you to have a business that you could build, but also you're creating an inventory of properties, and you at that point can also position yourself as the kind of almost first right to refusal guy,
Certainly.
in managing a portfolio. And you could just manage a kind of almost be a boutique property, manager. Like, okay, well, we're not Carolina One, we're not going to handle thousands of properties, but we're going to have, this many property. So like a little niche could be like, say, I have just one property that I have in the area, and I want to turn it over to a property manager, but I don't want to turn it over to Carolina One because I'm just kind of another cog in the wheel of what's going on there. But you could take on properties and manage them for people who are kind of your just one-off type of people. Like, okay, I want to buy one single family home a year. I would rather Vincent handle that because he's more hands-on or have a more personal touch than kicking it over to the place that has, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, places that they're managing.
Yeah.
I don't know, just thoughts, and
No, and I appreciate that, because I have thought about management because obviously I want to have rentals, I want to have cash flow, and I know that's a good way to get into it. One way that I've been researching actually is just master leasing, so like sandwich leasing between the property owner and of course the tenant. So I rent it from them and then sublease it out, and there's some sort of tax benefit to it. I don't know too much about it, but I know it can be advantageous. Um, so I don't know. It's something that's on our radar.
Mhm.
yeah, and
The only time, if I may say this,
yeah.
the only time a sandwich lease option does not work is in a depreciating market. We had a sandwich lease option back in 2008 or 2009. So it was at the top of the market and the market was going down. So we had it under contract for 64,000 buy price, $500 a month, which was the mortgage. So we were paying just straight mortgage, and we were going to pay 64,000 to the seller, and to our tenant buyer it was 750 rent and $84,000 buy price, and it was a 2-year. Well, we know what happened in 2009, 2010. Everything went down, and we could not sell it to them for 84 because it would never appreciate for the 84,000. And so it was a good thing that the buyers actually wanted out and didn't actually realize that they wouldn't qualify with the appraisal at the 84. So we were okay with that, and we just wound up giving the property back to the owner. And they were happy because they had a beautiful brand, nice painted new carpet. So we did a really good job on this, the light rehab that we had to do on that, a lot of cleaning. So that's when you have to watch your sandwich lease option in a depreciating time frame.
Yes, ma'am. See, and that's the thing, right? Is a traditional property management the route to go, and very well may be. Can you do something creative like a master leasing and like test drive a property more or less before you buy it? That's something, we're working at, and I don't know, we'll certainly get there because I understand what you're
And
saying, David.
property management has got, I mean, you know, uh, I find it interesting, but now I've got my own portfolio. That would be a hard business for me to start. I mean, just because where I'm personally at. But anyway, if it's something where you're trying to start more cash flow in your life, then that might be a route you could go. And you can just, I think there was some number that somebody gave me at one point that made sense. It said one person can manage X amount of properties, and I want to say that number is like 35 to 40. And then if you want to add more to your property management company, then you have to hire an additional person who can therefore handle another 35 to 40 properties in a full-time status, something like that.
Between Chelsea and I, we could do 80. Let's fill them up. Come on.
You can fill them up, exactly. So but it'll like also help you. It'll be a networking thing because now plumbers, handy people, and I'm sure that, I mean, the job I'm sure probably really sucks, and you probably earn really every penny that you get out of that. Like in other words, the money you make as a property manager, it's like, it's like you really feel like you're at a job, which is, but it might be a means to an end also.
Certainly.
But
and,
but
comes
you
with
might,
the experience and everything
but
else.
you might skip past level 1 and go straight to level 2 and hit a home run wholesale deal, and not have to worry about all that or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I'm just putting thoughts out there, but
no, I mean, I never thought of it that way. I mean, if I could, if Chelsea and I can manage some properties and get some cash flow every month,
you'll get some training. I mean, you'll have all the mentorship you ever needed here. I mean, you want to hear some stories? I mean, you can't beat my stories. I can guarantee you that. You won't beat my stories.
So, but the only thing that, you can say is that the return on your investment, if you have $0 going in on a property and you're making 10% of the rent, what is your return on your investment? Yes, you have a lot of time invested in it, but, actual out-of-pocket dollars besides advertising, and that's business expense, you have a really good return on your investment because you're just, you don't have to put your time in, your own money in for your down payment, your own money in for the repairs. You are just making that money back. So exactly. It's 10%. So.
And it's one more job description put on your your business card. Hey, I'm Vincent Felix. I own Charleston Properties Solutions. We manage properties and we wholesale properties. It's like it's a little bit more of a title thing also. It's very in harmony with some other things going on. But
well, I appreciate it.
I mean, like, what they say, have your different cash ways of making money align. It's not like you're saying, I'm gonna go over here and sell t-shirts at the market and be a wholesaler. It's not two different arenas.
The classic car business and the wholesaling, other than talking to sellers and like always practicing dissecting sellers and understanding that dynamic, but they don't have much synergy that go together.
Right. With dovetailing, so we're all saying the same thing, and they do have to. So you're saying, research your advertising budget. You're saying, business card that can be used. So dovetail it together.
Yeah, there was even there was a lady I called her for a rent sign, and she didn't want to sell the property, and she didn't want to rent it either, but they couldn't sell it until their mama passed, because then they get the step up basis or whatever. So there was an opportunity to manage the property there. So no lead goes on.
Well, here's and I would be willing to, if you need some I don't know, and I'm thinking out loud, this might be a conversation we have one-on-one at some point, but you know, I've got some money to play around with if you were, you know, wanting to go into something that might be a marketing budget or something like that, or some kind of seed money to get things up and running.
Right.
Not that it would have to be much, but you know, that option's there. And then the I mean, potentially, I mean, a lot more has to be talked about, but then the oh damn it, I just had some thoughts on the tip of my tongue and they're slipping out. Uh, but yeah, oh yeah, well, I mean, everything's automated nowadays anyway. So I mean, you got, you know, you pick a couple of apps that are, you know, no, like people are not shy about paying rent over an automated system. So that eliminates collection of rent altogether right there. I mean,
They have the
See, with
automated background checks and credit checks. You have like a one-stop shop for that you can, you know,
yeah,
just get in tune with, and that helps.
nice.
yeah. I mean, the harder, I would imagine the harder part about the job is like, okay, well, toilet's leaking. Let me figure out which plumber I can find to go do it, you know? And that's going to be, you know, the annoying side of it, where you feel like you're earning your pay because you're like, shit, I was supposed to go do this wholesale deal, but I kind of need to deal with this toilet thing today. But then again, you know, you grow it big enough, you have staff for that. You know, you have your manager that does more of that, and you're there to take on the, you know, you're there to fight the fires that, you know, your manager can't handle on his own or whatever, you know. So there's a lot of different levels to think about. But anyway,
Yeah, certainly.
I just thought that seemed like something that you might be good at, and that also might find you real estate opportunities and a lot of, you know, help. It might get your wheels spinning faster than they are. And then,
Yeah.
you know, you talk, but oh, I know what it was. Here's the other thing I thought about, that I haven't done this in a while, but sending out or contacting, well, you can't do this right now. I just remembered that. But anyway, contacting eviction lists, just
Yeah.
going on the county website and just being like, yo, just getting these people to call you or talk to you, whether you send them a letter or however you do it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just getting these landlords to talk to you, like, hey, Mr. Landlord, what you want to do? Are you
Yeah,
going to
see
sell
your-
this place? You want to sell this place? I got a plan for you. Oh, you need someone to manage it for you? I got a plan for you. Oh, you don't need anything right now? All right, that's cool. I'll check back in 6 months.
No, that's a great point. Certainly.
But I remember I haven't done eviction lists in like 4 or 5 years, but
Well, they're
yeah,
easy to get to.
yeah, they're easy. It's a list that just updates daily, really. I mean, you can go and go to each county and, you know, I mean, there's not a lot of people on this call right now that would be your competitors. I'm not going to be your competitor because I don't know.
It's not even, I
maybe
mean, that's the thing even about competition. Like, how many times are people getting a hold of the same person? Like, it's rare, you know? I mean,
it's rare, but people, you know how people are, sometimes people are, you know, want to shield their things. I've got some things that I wouldn't tell anybody what I do.
yeah, you have your trademarks or your trade secrets.
Yeah, exactly. I got my trademark, trade secrets. Now I would eventually, I mean, I've told people, but you know, it's not like in my best interest to tell people exactly everything I do. But I ultimately, if someone, you know, bought me a beer and had fed me enough alcohol, I'd probably tell them. But you know, I don't know. But,
Funny. That's funny, David.
but not that what I have is like some crazy like patented idea, but I mean, you know, I have ideas that I know work, and if I went and did more of it, I could have more success. A lot of times I just don't do it because I've got I've got kind of, to some degree, I'm comfortable where I'm at, and I just like to maintain where I'm at. But I mean, I know exactly how to find mobile homes. I know exactly how to do it, and you know, I don't always share exactly that idea with everybody, you know. But
Yep.
anyway, so the eviction list is probably a pretty good channel, especially when the evictions start piling up, as once the government deems it that we can evict people again. I don't even know how they ever. I don't know how people weren't kicking and screaming. Landlords weren't kicking and screaming louder after that one. But we're a minority in numbers in that sense. So we probably didn't have enough people to kick and scream loud enough. But point is I don't think really they had the authority to do all that, to, you know, for the government to intervene in a contractual relationship between two people. That really breaks a lot of, you know, rules that we all, and expectations we have about how the world works. And so it's just kind of, to me, makes it a little scary how, well, what are they going to do next, you know? So, but you know, and I also think at the same time the government tries to have the best intentions in mind. They just do it in a very sloppy way a lot of times. And there's a lot of fallout, unintended consequences, and incentives that politicians have that aren't aligned with actually what the people wanted in the first place, and whatever, you know, there's all these crazy things coming out of politics. But anyway, let's see, somebody else pick a different topic, or pick somebody, ask a question or pick a topic, or give us $1 million idea. Somebody tell us. I think we got somebody else in the call, or the Zoom meeting here.
Yeah, Michael's here.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So Michael, do you have a question?
No, Susan, not at the moment. Except I do have a request. Vincent, when are you going to put up the other videos? I'm waiting for those videos on YouTube.
I'll get on them, man. I got them here on my computer. I was telling David and Susan, it takes like 4 hours for this thing to upload, but I got to get them up. I got to quit farting around. I'm trying to find a different software we can use where they're a little more accessible, a little easier. So,
What's that other one that's alternative to YouTube? What's it called?
Vimeo.
Yeah, and then there's another thing that I like, this education thing that I have. You can post the clips in there, and it's like you can always access them. I'll figure it out. I'll get them up there, Michael. You have the link for the YouTube?
I have a link for the YouTube channel, but it hasn't been updated for quite a while.
Okay, I'll get on it. I appreciate you bringing that up because it keeps me on my toes.
Well, let's see about that when that can get updated. And let's see. I mean, looks like we had a handful of people show up, and it's probably time to wind it down here in the next couple of minutes. Unless y'all just think we need to go to 8:30. I mean, I suppose I can keep going if y'all want, but does anybody have anything else to talk about, or what do y'all want to do? I can talk, for the record, I can talk about real estate till 2 a.m. That's my bedtime. So
What do you think would be the demand and supply of real estate over the next year? So thinking 2021, once the moratorium for evictions have been lifted and people are looking for more properties and stuff like that. Like, what do you think 2021 will look like?
yeah, we've been in a roundabout way having that discussion for the past hour or so, but we haven't exactly like given a direct statement on that either. And we can make guesswork, but there's a lot of, because what I would say is there's a lot of dynamics at play here. I mean, you've got a backlog of delinquencies that's the highest in 20 years. You've got 12 million renters that are on average $5,800 behind. So those are obviously like negative factors that would come into play on the kind of supply and demand, and but they come in different, arenas as well, because you've got the delinquencies of being houses that people own, and the rentals being houses that people are renting. So, then you've got the stimulus checks that are potentially coming out. Well, let's just say more than likely coming out, and it's probably going to be a $2,000 stimulus check. And I would imagine that the administration's just going to keep pushing that button as often as they can, for better or worse. I have my own personal opinions on what that means and why we should do it or why we shouldn't do it or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, it looks like it's coming. So that might offset. I think potentially that's going to, people might be interested in getting caught up on their delinquencies on their mortgage, but I question whether people who get a $2,000 check would be interested in catching up on $5,800 worth of rental payments, or are they better off just taking that money and moving clean slate, moving into another place? And the possibilities behind that. So, but then there will be some people obviously that are going to have the foreclosures take place. So there would be foreclosures on the market. And when we talk about subject to, it's probably being more available as a real estate investment opportunity. And then, so then the other thing Biden was going to probably do, and he talked about in the campaign, was $15,000 first-time homeowner credit, and that might be a way to kind of prop the housing market up. But what might offset that is that we have rising interest rates. So it could be that rising interest rates meant that you could normally have afforded a $300,000 home with a, say, 2% interest rate. But now that the interest rates rose, the mortgage companies only underwrite you for a $275,000 loan. But maybe the $15,000 first-time homeowner tax credit will offset some of those housing issues. So you can see, I think from what I laid out, if you try to put those puzzle pieces together, you have nothing definitive that can be said for sure. But you can have guesswork and probabilities that, okay, I think we're going to see subject tos. I think we're going to see a move towards more affordable housing, because if people say can't pay rent for $1,200 a month, maybe they want to try and for $800 a month. So the cash flow and I think all housing is going to try to be people are going to try to go for more affordable housing, whatever that takes, tiny houses or mobile homes or just whatever. You also got people moving out of urban areas into the suburbs. But the other factor too for Charleston is that all over the world, people are doing remote work more. And that's probably never going back, because people realize, why do you need to house people into warehouse-like conditions behind cubicles? We're just kind of past that point, I think. So people are going to have the ability to pick and choose where they want to live and work. Living and working is in the same place, which is your primary residence. And so that's why there's a real strong market for Charleston, is because if people have options of where they would like to be located, then they want to move to places that are interesting and popular and fun and warm and beaches and palm trees and exciting things. And so I think Charleston's going to continue to be strong, or has probabilities to be strong, which allows for a pretty strong flip market. But also the flip market is challenging for me, and as a, let's say, a wholesaler or finding deals, because by the fact that we have a strong market, every investor and their brother wants to move here and be a real estate investor here. So you kind of have the fact that we're a strong market offset by the notion that there's more competition. So I kind of wonder about that. Anyway, I've talked that's a lot of different topics there, but maybe somewhere in there you got an idea or an answer, or maybe you have more questions or more confused. Any of those possibilities?
Well, it's all of the above and more.
Yeah.
The additional question I did have is, with the fact, with the flip state of now we're moving into, how are people getting around if they want to flip a house that 2 years you have to have it as a primary residence or as a resident in order not to incur those taxes?
How are people getting around that? Was that your question?
Yep.
Or what? Yeah, you said yes. Sorry.
Yes. That's,
okay.
I'm kind of
Well, I don't
wondering
know.
there.
I don't know if people are getting around it. Are you saying that they want to utilize that, and how are they utilizing it? Or are people, are you talking more investors, or are you talking about homeowners using this?
More of investors, if you're trying to buy a property to flip it, in Charleston, I think you have to hold it for like 2 years to not incur additional taxes.
Federal taxes.
Yeah.
Capital gains tax, basically, if you do it within the 2 years, you have to live in the property. But after that 2-year mark, they don't just waive, you have to pay your capital gains. So I would check with the tax accountant on more or less that. But if you know that there's a 2-year mark, so this way you don't have to pay capital gains on your on the difference between what you bought it for, your basis, and what you sold it for, then you need to, plan on selling it and moving.
Okay.
Yeah. Is this something that you're personally experiencing, or do you care to share about that, or do you is this such a general question?
No, it's a general question. You just said the trigger word of flipping, and I'm like, well,
yeah.
Is there a way to legitimately flip within a year or less than a year here in Charleston with that additional tax there? So I was like, huh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly tax strategies, like we talked about your retirement account, and then some people use like S corporations, or I've never done. I mean, I should probably look into all those kind of things, but I'm not equipped to answer those more advanced tax strategies here. But I think we're gonna have Steve Nettles in October, and actually that's a great, he's a tax pro whatever, he's actually a registered tax enrolled agent too, which is but anyway, he's definitely knows his craft. But if we have him in October, like we generally have him in October, that'll be great, because then we'll have that much time with the Biden administration and see what happens, and then he can come in and really nail those questions down for us. So I just thought of that one. But we might be a little bit in limbo here with all those kind of questions anyway, because apparently Biden's going to have like a 39% tax rate over a certain amount of money. That's what he's kind of campaigned for. Whereas now we're a 15% long-term capital gains tax, but he would like to go to 39% above a certain amount that you make, which potentially would affect a lot of flippers, but probably not most flippers. I think most flippers that make an extra couple thousand, 100,000 a year are probably not going to be into that tax bracket that is going to be affected. But Well, most flippers are actually in the short-term capital gains tax, which is a whole different category, but the long-term capital gains is set pretty high up there. I mean, even I think Joe Biden's version will probably be set pretty high. Anyway, so those are just different thoughts, but yeah, so. Any other thoughts?
I just to touch on what you said, I think so many people are wanting to move here and are moving here. It's like supply and demand, you know. If there's a bunch of demand, so if the supply opens up with, you know, here's the thing: once they lift the moratoriums, you know, they kick renters out. They might sell the house. They start foreclosing on people. I mean, that's still going to take 6 months. We're talking in, you know, June-ish or whatever. So, I mean, you know, before a flood of inventory hits, you know, this demand is still there. So I don't know. We're lucky in our area where people really want to move here. I mean, and luxury sales are like some of the top in the nation. It's like San Francisco, LA, Charleston, we're all right. But that's like Kiowa, Seabrook, Isle of Palms type luxury sales. But nonetheless, you know, people are moving here. So
Yeah.
I think we'll be
Yeah,
okay.
they want to be here. They want to be here. And, you know, I would imagine some people are getting squeezed out
How
because
was
they
it?
just,
How much did values drop in 08 here? I mean, I wasn't here.
Waylon?
Yeah, oh my gosh. We uh, we had a house and we bought it really well. So we didn't feel the crunch. So we bought it for 137,000 and it was worth 225. So before I think 2010, because it took a while for us to drop compared to the rest of the country. So about 2010 or 2011, um, the house was valued at like 140,000. So by that
Damn.
time, yep. So it dropped a lot, and it took a lot of time then to start building back up again. But then once it, you know, reached that 2009 level before the drop, it just kept going higher and higher and higher. It seems like there's no ceiling. But yeah, it dropped a lot, and that was just one property, you know, that I can compare to. So we had a few other properties. We always bought them in the right buy price, so we didn't feel the crunch.
Right.
But otherwise, if you bought it at the top of the market, you know, full retail, you lost a whole bunch, and you were underwater. And that's why short sales came into play, where the government forgave the deficiency. So a short sale is where you owe 200,000. The house is valued at 150. The bank takes 150 as a short sale. So this way you can get out from underneath your loan and it's sold to somebody else. So there's $50,000 in there that would be taxable to you as income, but the government said, okay, we're going to eliminate that and forgive that cancellation of debt. And that's why short sales were really popular. And then I think in 2017, that expired, so short sales stopped, because otherwise your taxable, the taxable event claiming income of the deficiency, the difference between what was owed and what it was sold at, was putting people into debt. So
Gotcha.
short sales basically stopped.
Gotcha. That's interesting.
And
Wow.
I remember I've always been kind of in the, you know, I've been a full-time investor since 2013, but I was a kind of a part-time guy up until, you know, but from, let's just say from 2010 to 2013. But I know people I've talked to back then that were wholesalers. They said that imagine this market now, but you can send out a bunch of yellow letters and you get like 10 times the phone calls.
Yeah.
And then everybody says, fuck yeah, excuse me.
I'll edit that out.
Fuck, say, yeah, edit that part out. Say, heck yeah, I'll sell you my house for, you know, what do you want to buy it for? And you got houses that are 40 cents on the dollar, and people are just signing them over to you, but you have no exit strategy.
Yep.
You have no exit strategy. So I think it's, totally possible we could go back to that scenario. But I don't know. You can't really, you can talk in
What if you could
probabilities,
take
but
them down with private money and then list them, if you can squeeze it. I don't know.
you're talking about just kind of banking on it.
Well,
Or
just if I don't know, can you buy them 40 cents on the dollar? Well, it depends on what it's worth. It just doesn't need to get complicated.
It's every little deal on its own, based on its own merits. It's what it comes down to. You still have to evaluate deal by deal.
Yeah.
Is a more specific answer. But that's when you hear when you hear people talk about I'm just sitting in cash right now. Typically, what they think is that the market is at its height, and we're going to experience a correction, or a recession, or a depression, or something like that. And their cash is sitting on the sidelines, ready to scoop up deals like that. That's kind of what you're hearing when you hear people talk like that. So,
Interesting.
But everything's cyclical. I mean, that sounds cliche, but it is. And, in some form or another, we'll go through, things that are, going to change, and we're going to constantly have to change our strategies. Just the way I find deals now compared to 7 years ago is definitely different. And it's going to be different in 5 years from now, more than likely. And so there's always some things are always in motion. So these conversations are worthwhile to get at least a general idea for where we're at. We're kind of out there searching in the dark with a flashlight, but that's the best tool we have to be able to determine what the market's like and where we should be headed. And, I think it's, affordable housing, multifamily properties. That's kind of,
Well, I've told you
that,
about the city of Charleston drafting an ordinance for tiny homes on single family residences, right?
No, I mean, I didn't hear it. I'm not always on every call, but
Yeah. So I need to try and find it online, but some lady that advocates for affordable housing, she had posted about it. Anyways, they're drafting an ordinance for the city of Charleston to allow tiny homes to be built on single family residences. So hopefully that includes language with houses on wheels, because I think there's a serious opportunity there. If I had here's the thing, I want passive income, cash flow. That way I can go out and lease tiny homes and sublease them to homeowners and make
that's your $1 million idea.
That's my $1 million idea. That's what I want to do.
Wow. You just spilled the beans right here at the end of this.
Well, you can do
Zoom.
it. Hey, we're helping everybody. So you want to do it? Come on.
I'm going to patent your idea.
That's fine.
I'm going to go.
There's already a startup doing it, but that doesn't matter. They can't.
Yeah.
There's too much demand. And trust me, there's not enough.
No, all joking aside, that sounds interesting. I like you mentioned the term master lease. I'm not even sure I'm familiar with that term. But it makes sense. You're just taking a spread.
Yeah.
You're saying David's renting this mobile home you could even take it on this level. Okay, lot rent's $100. David's renting it because a lot of what I do is mobile homes in parks. So I don't even own the land underneath it, but lot rent's $100. Rental's $500. So David's spread is $400, and then Vincent's renting it out for. So Vincent's paying David that $500 a month. David's paying the lot rent $100 a month, and then Vincent's coming in and renting it out and managing it for $750 a month. So he's getting $250 a month.
Correct.
And you're looking for opportunities or cash flow I can see where you're going with that, because you're looking for landlords that want 500 a month, but really the market value is higher than what they
Yeah,
understand it to be. That's essentially the strategy.
correct.
Tired landlords, the one that we did, back then we called it sandwich lease option. The tenant was raising pit bull puppies in the house, and the house was used as the toilet.
Oh
And-
Lord.
And they were really tired landlords. Oh my gosh. So we came in, and that was the deal. Their mortgage balance, which was like around 64,000, and their mortgage payment per month was 500, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And so we upped the price of the sale of the house, and we upped the rent. And so we just controlled it that way. And so if you can get that type of a deal, that's really sweet.
Certainly, and you hit it right on the head, right? You're controlling that deal, and I don't own anything. You just manage it and get
Yep.
the cash flow, so it works for everybody.
The problem that you solve is that landlord was just so sick and tired of dealing with the tenants. And of
Yeah.
course, we put tenant buyers in there. So back then, I think it had a different mentality. Now, tenant buyers, I think they can get away with more. So I think when the term tenant buyer came into play, it was a little bit more of a responsibility on them that they would eventually be buying the place. I don't know, maybe I just got a little cynical after all the years, but they used to have pride that, oh, I'm working towards buying this property. This is the only way that I'm going to be able to buy this property is through a lease with option to buy. So now I think a lot of tenants go in thinking that, okay, I can get away with some more things when
Right.
I'm in the tenant buyer situation. So just, be careful with that, but otherwise it's a really good strategy.
Well, thank you.
So let's take my illustration, my example. So I'm you're subleasing for me, or I'm subleasing for you, or whatever the case would be. You'd be subleasing.
I'm leasing from you, and
Yeah.
then I'm turning around and subleasing it to somebody else.
Yes.
Right. That makes sense.
Yes.
So what happens when crap hits the fan and your tenant doesn't perform? How do you structure that contract? For
Well,
me, I mean,
you have to pay and then get somebody else in. I mean,
Well-
Vincent would always be responsible for the time that the property is vacant. So
Well, that
Yeah.
depends on the agreement I have with the homeowner. So, say it's a
Yeah.
performance-based master lease, then you get paid when I get paid. So if I'm
Yeah.
not getting paid, David, you ain't getting paid, or whoever.
yeah, which would not be advantageous to the homeowner, really,
Right.
and
if it's-
unless you could offer a much better profit than, I mean, it's risk versus reward. Anyway, go
Exactly.
ahead.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing. I'm still learning about it I'm still in the baby.
I mean, you could have options. You could say, all right, here's a performance based. If you want to do a performance based, I can give you 600 a month, David. But there will be months where I don't get paid, things don't work out and yada yada. So who pays for repairs?
The homeowner.
Who's the homeowner? So
Well-
I handle repairs.
Well, I mean, if how does it work in a typical rental situation? If you have a renter and you're renting it to them, who's responsible for repairs? I don't know. I don't really
Yeah.
know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would be responsible for repairs, except for the fact that you were the one who subleased it, and your actions of subleasing and now create a whole different class of responsibility. I mean, I'm supposed there's a contract to, mitigate all of that, I'm sure, but it just becomes the risk. I guess the risk to it all is that you can just create a lot of
Yeah.
arguments, it sounds like.
And that's the thing where it's like, how does it work with a regular property manager? I don't know. Right. And how does that differ from a master lease? I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, well, it sounds like the difference would be So a master lease sounds like it would work really a whole lot better on like a like a land agreement or something like that. Something that was low maintenance, also very little, capital expenditures and very little downside risk. So the downside risk of just land is like, whoops, I got to pay my tax bill at the end of the year, or maybe some like liability insurance, but there's no, real downside risk to land. But you talk about a house, there's a lot of downside risk because those tenants could tear it up. Those tenants could, blah, 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 whatever, you name it. And so point being is that the downside risk of a property manager is really not that much. That's why you hear of bad property managers, because they're like, oh, I got a property manager and they turned out to be horrible. That's why you hear people say that, because there's not really a downside risk for the property manager. They lose reputation. They lose out on their potential like monthly 10% property management fee, and they, but as far as the downside risk of not performing a certain repair and then therefore creating a liability and whatever, that's kind of what's at stake, for somebody that would hire a property manager. But the downside risk of a master lease, depending on what the contract would say, is that now the repairs can be argued about, who's responsible for what. That gets a little iffy. I mean, even if it's in contract, who's reliant upon the performance of the other? So anyway, it's not to say it can't be done. It sounds like it could be a potential avenue, but
Yeah, and you're definitely right that it does get a little complicated, because the way we had it structured, and of course we're going back a decade, was that the seller, the owner of the house, basically would cover anything that was of roof, air conditioning, anything like that. And then anything under $500, the tenant buyer would cover. And then anything in between, then we would have to cover, because we are making that spread. So that's the way we had it set up. And, so the seller knew what they were going to be responsible for, if anything. And of course, if the roof was, within a certain time frame, that you're not going to need a new roof if it's within 20, 25 years. AC, if it's within 7 to 10 years, you're probably good and you're not going to be needing an expense on there. So technically the seller is really good on not having to pay any of those repairs. The tenant buyer paying anything under $500. So a leaky faucet, a stopped up toilet, stuff like that, they would take care of. And then anything over that would definitely fall in the range of the middleman. So that's the way we had it set up. But I'm sure there's so many different ways that you can set it up. And things have probably evolved a lot since back then.
Yeah, I mean, you can really almost write a contract any way you want, except when it comes to, you're going to run into troubles like Tracy Mills is going through now, where if you start mentioning equity in your contracts, then you're going down a rabbit hole that the courts aren't really, especially if there's gray area, courts are just going to kick it to a more complicated court.
True.
So that's something to be aware of. But I suppose on just a straight lease agreement, you could write it however, but they also want it to be what's called bilateral too. I mean, courts want contracts to be bilateral, meaning the person who presented the contract needs to be fair to the other party, because typically the other party are not attorneys, and they don't, so people have the notion of, it's what the contract says. Well, actually it's you can write in the contract that you owe me $1 million for not paying $1 million late fee for not paying your $1,000 rent that month. but that's not a bilateral like contract, and a court would not honor that. It's really an unconscionable agreement, as they would call it, meaning that's out, you're out of your mind, get the F out of this courtroom, is what the judge would say in layman's terms. So but yeah, I mean, you can suppose you can you write on the master lease, and the sublease would have some room for what you can, how creative you can get in there. But at a certain point, it's not beneficial for one party of the other to be in that contract, so it's not going to be honored in a court setting. But where that line is debatable. So anyway, that sounds, master leases and lease options, that sounds like a whole fun conversation that we could spend 3 more hours talking about, probably on another meeting. So
there was one, I was researching this one property, and I made myself a note because a month later I'll go back to it and say, what in the world was I thinking about this property? So my note was that there was a judgment from 2010 that was going to fall off in 2030 because it's a 20-year judgment, and then they fall off. And so we're here in 2021. There's 9 more years left on that judgment. So it doesn't work with the judgment being there because it's way too high to buy, with the mortgage and then the judgment. But if you can do a buy and hold on a lease with option, then let the time run out for that judgment and then buy it for the mortgage balance, you have a deal. So I write myself notes like that just in case, because otherwise I'll say, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
That's the only way to make that deal work, because that judgment would run out in 2030.
Yeah, that's an important point, is put things on the calendar. I've gotten so many deals because I calendared things out for 6 months. And even if it's just somebody that's says, hey, I'm not selling my house now, but we're going to do it in August. I mean, be the person that calls them back.
Exactly.
I mean, that's how you fortune is in the follow-up. And the amount of people I know that don't follow up, the amount of people I know that don't even answer the phone when they, I call them, kind of blows my mind. I mean, well, of course people don't answer the phone, but I'm talking about even return a voice message or but I could get one of those postcards in the mail and say, I'll buy your house, blah, blah, blah. I get those quite a bit, but sometimes I'll just play a little game of let me send them a text message or a voicemail. It says, oh my God, thank you for reaching out to me. Please call me back. You're my, you've answered my prayers.
Nice.
And 90% of the time, they don't even call me back. I'm like, I'm just doing it just to test it, and, find out who's behind the postcard and whatever, and I don't do that every time. I'm not out there to, waste people's time, but it's just, it's a little bit of a test. Like, if you get postcards in the mail, try reaching out to them. You'd be surprised. I'd say 80-90% of the time, don't even get a return phone call. You don't even get a return text message.
With something that sweet, you would think that they would return your call, but.
Yeah, I mean, you can be like, I literally have done this before. Not every time, so to keep it simple, but I've literally said, thank the Lord, you have reached out to me. You've answered my prayers. Thank you. And it's like, how much more of a motivated seller does that sound like? I don't know how to get more motivated sounding than that, but they don't they won't return your call, or either it'll be some like half-baked response and a text message back. It'll be some like, automated text message like, hey, we got your voicemail. Are you available next week at Tuesday to talk about this? And I'm like, you're done. Like, that's not how you treat your motivated sellers. When a motivated seller's out there, you drop everything you're doing and you go get the deal.
Yes.
You don't tell a motivated seller do you mind if I call you next week at Tuesday at 9 o'clock when I'm free and I don't have my kids and that day and blah, blah, blah. It's not how this business works. I mean, it can work. I mean, there's a certain percentage that will work that way. But, you know, just by, you know, following up with these people and, you know, taking a deal to taking a lead to the point where you're going to separate the suspects from the prospects and figure out when it's a no deal. Take it to the point where you can fairly well confirm it's a no deal without wasting a lot of your time. It's a balance between all that, and you know, deals will happen. So, but I think I'm probably at the end of the my time here.
I have
So,
some good news.
yeah.
Okay, remember I was telling you that my tenant owed me $5,080? Well, now
Yeah.
she just rang the doorbell and she sent me a text. So now she paid $1,300 out of that. And so I'm not,
Wow.
I'm not
Yay.
better. And then she said by the end of the month, she should have some more, but the doorbell just rang. So I'm gonna go answer that. And so that was good news though. Look at that.
That's
That's
fantastic.
exciting.
Awesome.
Well, we'll let Tri-County investors take partial credit for that then. How does
Thank
that
you.
sound?
Yes, it was put out in the atmosphere.
But we'll let you keep all the money, Susan. How does that sound?
Okay,
So-
thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, hey, this is fun, everybody. I appreciate everybody coming on, and you know, we're gonna stick in here and you know, keep doing what we're doing. We've got some exciting things coming up, and once vaccines start getting more present and people feel more comfortable, then we'll be able to go back to our community center and be able to do these one-on-one face-to-face things, which I think we all enjoy so much as real estate investors. So stay in touch. We'll be looking forward to more to come, and you know, keep doing what you're doing or keep doing more of what you're doing. So,
Thank you.
David.
all right.
Bye-bye,
Thank
Thank
you.
you all. Thank you,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye-bye.